to Vietnam, I never really was a popular song person. The Doors came on about 60, for us in Vietnam, early 68 is when I first heard it. That first album was a blow album. It was just, people just sat up and listened, and he was shocking and primitive.
There was such an imbalance at the time of, you know, of the goody-goody kind of stuff that was flower power, that there was a need for something like the Doors at the time, and we filled it.
Try to set the night on fire.
Drugs opened up white middle-class eyes, opened them up and made them see and made them appreciate what was out there in the world. I took some acid down in Sydney, and it was like, I think it was the first acid I ever took, and I got really high. Fell in love with somebody, and wanted to go AWOL and desert and live in Australia. They had to drag me back. The MPs came to get me, and they dragged me back to Vietnam, and they sent me back to Vietnam. So at that point, you know, anything went, and that was that go for broke attitude is what characterized Morrison.
He just caught a moment when that inspired a whole generation.
When I came back from Vietnam, I was mesmerized by Morrison, and I wrote Break, screenplay. My first screenplay, which was the basis many years later of Platoon, was called Break, and it was a fantasy surreal set in Vietnam, depicting imagery created by Morrison in his songs. I sent it out to him with the idea that he would play the role.
For a long time, I was always the one that was against doing a Doors movie, because I never thought anybody could do it justice.
The film got started under very difficult circumstances.
I never wanted there to be a Doors movie. I put a curse on it. And you can scoff all you like, but the fact remains that for 20 years, there wasn't.
The Doors, as you know, had a complicated history. And I never thought I'd direct this movie. It was just a movie that was around. One of those pain-in-the-ass movies where there's 14 producers, 6 owners of the material. There's no way you're going to ever make that movie.
Serious, legal, emotional, spiritual battles with the estate, with the band, with many, many, many companies.
Ray Manzarek, who's been perhaps the chief enemy of this film, took an unnatural, I thought, unnatural dislike to the script early on, and was very destructive to me and hated me.
I had always been an Oliver fan from the time of Salvador, which was one of my favorite movies. And, you know, I could just see something like Salvador with the Doors. You know, I thought that would be great. So, you know, I finally consented, and the other guys did too, and we signed off with Oliver Stone.
I trusted Oliver. I really did. I thought that if anybody could do right by Jim, this guy would.
Oliver had a real love for Jim, you know, and I think he understood Jim because Oliver was a lonely child. You know, he had a kind of lonely childhood. He was you know, had a very powerful mind.
I was in the Merchant Marine, I was in the Army, I was in a lot of male institutions. Morrison's father was too, and Morrison came from that world. His dad was a male authority figure. He was an admiral in the Navy, and you gotta remember that about Jim Morrison.
Never thought we could find anybody to play Jim.
When you stray.
When I first met Val, I didn't think he was right at all. I mean, he didn't look like Jim, didn't talk like him or nothing, you know. And then he showed me this clip that he had done, a little demo. He actually had a little Doors band that he had played with, I guess, at some clubs or something. And they were really good. I mean, he was really good. Yeah, I guess he grew his hair long and stuff, and that pretty much convinced me.
No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose. And the love becomes a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire.
No,
Come
I like
on,
it.
baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire.
The Doors were about anything. They were about being live. So if I could do it, then wouldn't that be the best thing? He said, yeah, but you can't. And I said, I know I can't. It doesn't feel, I mean, I think that would be a hard thing to do, but if I could do it, that would be worth it, wouldn't it? He said, yeah, so how are you going to do that? I said, well, I don't know, I'll make you tape, and if you can't tell the difference. I did 3 songs and played it for Oliver, driving along Mulholland. And I can't remember my scam, but I said, It was 3 songs, but I either said 2 of them were Jim and 1 of them was me, or 1 of them was, I can't remember. But he was, listening. He said, well, that's Jim. I said, okay, go through it all. And so he was happy to find out that they were all me, but had to get it verified.
His performance was pretty dynamic in that immediately, and I didn't know him before that, and I really haven't known him since that, but he seemed to really be that guy.
I believe in a long, prolonged derangement of the senses to attain the unknown.
This memo came around that everybody should refer to him as Jim, and I insisted that I would only refer to him as asshole for the remainder of the shoot, which I did. I think it helped his performance. Helped mine.
I found an island in your arms, country in your eyes.
I fooled the road manager, Oliver, Densmore, Robbie Krieger.
They set me up with a guitar coach in New York, a guy named Elliot Randall. And so I worked with him, but mostly I held the guitar and he drank. And that's when I met Robbie. And he and I sort of became friends. And I'd spent a lot of time at his place, and he would show me where to put my fingers for certain things. He was very specific about that. He wanted to look real. What is that, a GF sharp A chord? Yeah, I know that. The first scene we were doing, and I was really apprehensive, and I was just kind of, hoping the camera wouldn't swing by me. And by, that New Haven scene, I was like, Eddie Van Halen.
We'd get that feedback from the audience, and then it would come back to them and back and forth. And that's pretty much what a rock concert should be, I think. There was that thing about a Doors concert where you never really knew what was going to happen.
They were kind of the original punk band.
People have been heard at Doors concerts.
When they were on, they were the best band in the world, even if you didn't like their music. And when they were off, they were the worst band in the world.
On a good night, the Doors, it was really almost like a religious experience.
What Jim did in concerts, and I guess in the poetry too, but particularly in the concerts, was to stand as an intermediary between the audience and the creative spirit, the creative force, or God, if you want to call it that, whatever. He represented the audience to the gods, and he represented the gods to the audience.
I don't know whether he really considered himself a shaman or whatever. I think he just used the metaphor, I think, to his advantage.
I don't think the shaman, from what I've read, is really too interested in defining his role in society. He's just more interested in pursuing his own fantasies.
Kiss the snake on the tongue. Kiss the serpent.
Driving in the desert with his parents one day, he sees a truckload of wounded and dead Indians. And out of the soul of a dead Indian, he says, jumps the shamanistic spirit, comes into his soul and motivates him. It's an amazing revelation for a boy living in the 1950s in America.
That whole thing in the beginning of the movie where he was a kid and the ghosts of the Indians jumped into his mind, he really believed that happened.
Obviously, it unleashed something in him. It may have enabled him to have a kind of grounding, a way to access the shamanic potential. Yeah, that I could certainly see. But no, he talked about it once or twice, but it wasn't a big deal. He did not believe there were Indians running around inside his skull.
make him understand.
Peyote was an element of the movie and the script and Morrison's life, and I had spent a lot of time with the Indians and done peyote ceremonies, so I just suggested we go to South Dakota and do one. I don't think either of us were prepared for he was preparing these black balls that he would chew up all this peyote. It was disgusting. We didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Middle of the night, this girl and her two brothers came in. Beautiful girl. And Oliver and I were sort of transfixed. And dawn came and they do all the prayers, and the peyote mother comes in with the bucket and the water and the food, and they offer it all to you. And Oliver was thinking mainly about how we're going to get this girl back to LA. So we were going to try and take her on the jet, but Crow Dog saw what we were up to.
You followed me? Why?
'Cause you're the one.
What was beautiful about Pamela, and perhaps I missed it in the film, I don't know, I tried for it with Meg Ryan, was to try to sell the idea that this girl was an all-American kind of girl next door that Jim Morrison basically liked. He wanted her.
The California girl that Pam was, and we met enough guys that knew her, and that she really was a perfect example of. It was something physically that she had that was always evident, that was equal to that muse that's dramatized in the form of the Indian.
Pam Kirsan was really Jim's love in his life.
She was his golden girl. And I think that was the great love of his life, and many of his poems sort of sense that feeling for her. Pamela's parents were much more, how do you say, involved, and they were concerned that their daughter would be malportrayed. The evidence at that time pointed to her being definitely on heroin.